Comic panels, comic panels, comic panels, comic panels. When I wake up, comic panels. When I look into the mirror, comic panels. Everywhere I go, comic panels, comic panels, comic panels, comic panels, comic panels, comic. I dream of comic panels. I eat comic panels. I cry on the shoulder of comic panels. My life, everything is a comic panel. Desk of Death Battle. What really happened in Infinity War? This is an episode about Thanos, nobody's favourite Dragon Ball villain from Avengers Endgame. But hey, the good news about this episode is that unlike his death battle, we can actually talk about the character in the comic without bringing everything back to the MC.
Have you heard of the MCU?
Okay, look, the opening is fine. Set up the MCU and how it differs from the comics, but then spend the rest of the video just talking about the comic. No. This entire video does nothing but call back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, making this video essentially a poor man's What the Difference, or the poverty edition of Lost in Adaptation. Fine, I can even forgive bringing up the MCU in reference to the difference between Thanos. It's probably too easy a joke to joke, oh, what's the plural version of this? Thanoses. I'm calling them Thanoses. But you know what I don't need? I do not need every single little minute motherfucking detail being brought up in relation to how the MCU differs from the comics. I need to be told, wow, did you know Goku took a shit in the front yard? This in fact did not happen in the MCU! Don't start your video with a bit about how everyone has seen the MCU, which presumably sets the precedent that the MCU does not need to be brought up every few seconds, because presumably, that's the context we're assuming everyone has. And then you just endlessly bring up the MCU. I don't need that, for fuck's sake. Anyway, a good chunk of this video is devoted to basically MCU Thanos is trying to be sympathetic, but he's just a morally ambiguous douche and has this air of almost talking down to MCU Thanos for some reason. Like, yeah, there's flaws with his plan, but everyone, and this is not just a DBX, not just a death battle thing, not just Jocelyn, everyone who brings up the weird elements of Thanos' plan failed to bring up how Thanos has seen his plan work in practice. Do you remember Gamora's planet? He fucking brings this up. He's literally seen with his own eyes that his methods work on that small scale. Small relatively, a planet is relatively small to the universe. And the arguments against his plan are ones that he would see as arguments in theory that don't match up to the success of practice he has done. He sees his successes and he only thinks about them. Any failures, he doesn't consider them. It's a form of confirmation bias. He's looking for evidence that his way works. So it's not the issue. The issue with Thanos is not that he doesn't see his flaws. It's that he ignores them because he is hopeful of his plan's success and looks for evidence that he's right. Obviously the plan has flaws, but everyone brings that up as if that's a problem with the writing, that his plan has flaws. As if we're supposed to be rooting for the heroes if they were fighting someone whose plan benefits everyone and doesn't have flaws. Like we would go, yeah, definitely stop that guy. No, of course his plan has flaws. That's not a flaw with the writing, it's a flaw with the character. The thing is, Thanos' mistake isn't that he didn't think of those flaws. He did. He had confirmation bias that made him think he's seen it work, so those flaws are just things that don't really matter. The problem is he is not considering the ramifications of taking a small scale plan like that and blowing it up to a universal scale. But obviously, none of that is sympathetic. Being traumatized by the death of your entire planet and coming up with a flawed plan as a result, and looking for reasons to justify yourself as right against others, is something nobody does. Who in the world has ever actively searched for reasons that they're correct? Confirmation bias is a silly myth. What's actually sympathetic is Thanos in the comics being a simp who will actively change his entire personality because he's mad in love with a woman who has already told him no on multiple occasions, and will commit genocide to attempt to force himself onto her. And I think now is about the time I go back to episode 1 of this season of Desk of Death Battle. There's a part in that episode that everyone brought up in the comments that I didn't talk about, because frankly I couldn't have been bothered to talk about it, and also I forgot. Superman gives Lois Lane a kiss and wipes a memory in Superman 2. Now, Jocelyn acts like this is a bad thing. Like this is some misogynistic male forces himself onto a woman and violates her rights thing. The context of this scene: Superman is giving Lois Lane, his girlfriend, a kiss that she consented to, and he wipes her mind. The reason he does that is because this entire scene is prefaced with her talking about how much knowing his identity is killing her inside. This is apparently creepy that he does this. Lois Lane is literally in tears because of the emotional and mental stress and pain that she feels from knowing Clark's secret. What Superman is doing here is giving away his chance to live a happy and full life with the woman he loves, not having to hide himself for her, because he learns this moment that knowing his identity is bad for Lois because it hurts her inside. He's willingly giving up his happily ever after for the sake of knowing that she no longer has to feel pain every time he walks into a room with her. It's a tragic moment for Clark, and it goes to show who he is as a person. He is someone who will give up his happy ending if that happy ending means anyone would have to suffer. This is not a creepy moment at all. Lois doesn't want to know his identity. If this is the only way Superman can take away her memory of who he is, what else is he supposed to do? Yes, he doesn't explain to her what he's doing, but that's because he doesn't want her to hurt any more than she already does. If she was told by him that this is what would happen, she would be in pain knowing that she is basically making him throw away his happy ending. He doesn't want her to feel that pain in her final moments of knowing who he is. He wants the last thing she thinks about while she knows who he is to be that he loves her. Is there a problem with that? But anyway, back to this episode. Thanos here is such a massive simp that he will literally mold his personality around trying to please a woman he loves, even when she has already said no multiple times. He will kill half the universe and commit genocide for her, but he is cool and sympathetic. Just a little bit of comic weirdness, but it's okay. He's cool. He can sympathize. Remember, kids, making sacrifices for the person you love, creepy and weird. Obsessing over someone who has rejected you until your entire personality amounts to trying to please them, sympathetic and cool. I guess this goes to show you can't spell sympathetic without simp. And how do we follow this up? You bring up the MCU again well, why would you not fucking do that? Hey look, there's Hawkeye, time to bring up an MCU reference. Oh yes, the Infinity Gems. Let's reference the MCU again. Except this time, let's say being so strong that it'll kill you if you touch it is not as impressive as not being so strong it'll kill you if you touch it. Yes, I'm not joking. She says, as an example of how the Infinity Gems are stronger than the MCU Infinity Stones, that the Infinity Gems will not kill you on touch. That does not seem like a matter of the stones being more powerful or the gems being more powerful. That seems to be a matter of just control over the stones being easier with the gems. Then let's bring up Endgame. Of course, why wouldn't we? Let's go back to comic panels. But we brought up the lineup of heroes. We got to bring in Star-Lord, MCU. We got to bring up how the MCU movie Infinity War is not an adaptation of Infinity War. And while we're at it, let's not actually explain what really happened in Infinity War. No, let's only talk about Infinity Gauntlet, a portion of the saga. So despite the name of the episode, this isn't even really what really happened in Infinity War. This is what really happened in a part of the Infinity Saga that was then adapted into the blockbuster MCU movie Infinity War. Which would be a mouthful of a name, but it would be a funny one. How do we go from episode fucking 1 of the entire series, not this season, the whole series, explaining a long-ass series of comic issues in a concise, funny, and entertaining way, to this shit? This episode of Desk of Death Battle was draining. I don't dislike it as much as the Madara one, because at least I can understand why it exists. They didn't bring up all this in the episode. No, they didn't feel the need to compare Thanos' personality to his MCU self's personality. Thank God. Don't need more problems for me to dislike that episode. I didn't even brought up. It has the same problems as every other episode and the same bless as every other episode. Jocelyn is animated and performed well, and the editing is really good. Yes, it still has those pluses. Yes, it still has all the problems. It's about as funny as licking a dog's testicles. It has elements that I like and elements that I don't like. But this episode just drained me. How else can I explain it beyond? It was just an endless cascade of MCU comic panel, MCU comic panel. I get it. What did I expect? It's an episode about Thanos. But what I expected was that the focus would be on the content of the comic panels, and the MCU would only be a visual reference. So they'll bring up Thanos' snap in the comic, and they'll show some MCU footage. fine. I didn't expect they'd bring up the snap in the comic and then compare it to the MCU. I didn't need that. I didn't need to constantly be reminded of the MCU version of events. I would have much preferred if Jocelyn left the MCU stuff to the intro and to the Thanos comparison, and then focused on the comics. Like, is that so much to ask for? That when there's a video on the Death Battle channel about comic Thanos, we can actually have it be about comic Thanos. Like, can we not get something Thanos related on the Death Battle channel that doesn't constantly bring up the MCU? I get it, the MCU's big, the MCU's popular, but this would be a great time to educate people on the comic, but what are they learning about the comic in this video? They're learning Thanos was an asshole. They're learning some very basic plot elements that they could read off Wikipedia. Or honestly, less than they would just get off Wikipedia. All they really explained was that Thanos wanted to fuck Death. Thanos got the stones snapped. The heroes went to fight him, and then Adam Warlock won. They didn't even go into how really the Warlock and Nebula stuff happened. They didn't explain anything in good detail. Like, I like what I remember of the Infinity Saga that I've read. It's not a lot. I mean, I've read through the Infinity Gauntlet, and I read through some of Infinity War. I liked what I read. It's not bad. Please, you could have brought that up. You could have brought up all the interesting things with it. But no, they just bring it out in the most basic way possible. It's like if they did a video on the Infinity War movie, and they just constantly compared it to the comic, and all they told you about the movie was Thanos shows up because he wants to take away half the universe's lives so that there'll be more food to go around for people. And then everyone tried to stop him and everyone failed. And the hero was Iron Man. And that's how they... Imagine if someone explained the movie Infinity War to you. Obviously, I'm assuming that you've watched Infinity War, but statistically, you probably have. And you would know that if someone explained the movie to you like that, they're not explaining anything. And that's exactly this. They're not explaining the ins and outs of the Infinity Saga. Would it be that hard? This episode did not do it for me, not at all. I do not like this episode very much. It's boring at best. It feels like it never wants to shut up at reminding me of this thing I like at worst. And in case you're wondering, yes, I am overacting for the camera. Well, I mean, not really the camera, for the mic, because it makes it more really funnier, but like, I need to be clear about that, because people will think Desk of Death Battle is a show worth my time to be angry over. In the end, it's a bad episode, but it's not my least favorite of the season so far, and I wanted to do something a bit crazy for this video by losing my damn mind. I go to sleep. All I think about is the comic panels seared into my brain. I don't hate comics. I don't even dislike them. So many comic panels, endless comic panels. You can only have so much of one thing you like before you stop caring. Please, no more comic panels. What episode of Desk of Death Battle without comic panels and manga panels? Please. Holy shit, a plush pumpkin!